All right, Alexander. So we're recording this on a Thursday evening, our time. So in a few hours, we'll have the final day of the Democrat convention, where Biden will officially accept the nomination of the Democrat presidential candidate. I don't know if he'll know that he's the Democrat presidential candidate, but all right, we'll see how that plays out. But let's cover days 2 and 3. And Alexander, I don't know. Do you follow baseball, American baseball at all?
No, it's not one of my great games, but
Okay.
I have some knowledge of it.
Okay, well, let me
it's
just
a great game, by the way. Great to
Yeah.
watch. I don't understand all its rules, but anyway, carry on.
I love baseball, by the way, but what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna tee it up for you. I'm just gonna soft pitch it right over the plate for you, tee it up so you can just knock it out of the park. All right. So that's the base. Now I've written. I could probably write a book on the silliness and the cringe of the convention, the absurdity of it all. But I wrote a few points here that I'll just throw out to you, and you can comment, and we'll just get through this list. I got a page of notes here. I don't know if people can see it, but no particular order, just stuff that I noticed as I was trying to watch this virtual Zoom convention. And guys, my God, it was difficult trying to get through this stuff. I mean, I don't know if it was comedy or if it was Saturday Night Live or some sort of strange Monty Python film that we were watching. I don't know. But anyway, first thing, Alexander, for you to comment on. I'm just going to rattle them off. You comment. Knock it out of the park. Elizabeth Warren was the one they picked to talk to the Native American caucus.
I mean, just you can't make it up. I mean, well, of course. I mean, as we know, she's the person who is a Native American, if not by
124,
whatever it was. Exactly. I mean, but I mean, again, it shows such a complete, lack of understanding. That you wheel out Warren in a way that he's going to remind everybody of the fact that she invented a fairy tale about her origins. I mean, surely you'd want to sort of, where you want to wheel out Warren at all, which might not be a terribly good idea since I don't find it particularly likable, but that's my own personal view. But if you're going to do it, then don't do it in a way that will remind everybody of things that she said about herself and about her past, which is simply not true. And do that, have that also, with the Native Americans there, who of course, I mean, they must have their own particular perspective on Warren's, shall we say, inventions. I mean, this is so bizarre. I mean, it's just weird again. I mean, it just goes to show that, the Democrats, I mean, they've just completely lost the plot, in my opinion. I mean, fantasy again has replaced fact. So maybe in their mind, if she says she's a Native American, she is a Native American, even if she isn't. I mean, it's as simple as that.
It gets better. It gets better. I'm starting with the light stuff.
Yeah.
They trotted out Sally Yates.
Yeah, no, well, quite. I mean, the great stalwart defender of law and order, the person who, weaponized the Justice Department against Donald Trump, which he did, by the way, who sabotaged the executive order, which he was wrong to do, as the Supreme Court said, who was implicated in all the work against Flynn, only she was apparently in a completely incompetent and bungling fashion. She's wheeled out now to be, criticize Donald Trump of weaponizing the Justice Department. I mean, it's just, again, I mean, it's so completely setting, everything upside down. Also, once more, we have all these revelations about Flynn and about all the wrong things that were done to Flynn. So what do? You trundle out one of the people who was most implicated in all these terrible things against Flynn. It seems, again, it's very weird. It's just bizarre. The other thing I'm going to say, by the way, because I was watching Sally Yates, is I mean, she really isn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. Is all I can say. I mean, she didn't come across to me as either very bright or at all charismatic. So why they would want to wheel her out at all, I really can't think. I mean, maybe they don't have anybody else who can represent the Justice Department. Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, so they bring out Bill Clinton to talk about values and morality, and on the same day, photos emerge from the Daily Mail UK of Bill Clinton getting a massage from one of the Epstein victims. So they bring out Bill Clinton to lecture everybody on values and morality.
Well, there we go. I mean, this is obviously now, as you rightly said, this isn't just Monty Python. I mean, it's Salvador Dali surrealism. It's the world turning on itself. I mean, it's just. I mean, Bill Clinton is obviously the person to talk about values and morality, because he's the person who inverts them, and he has been doing so successfully for so long, for his entire career. I mean, again, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, bear in mind that not only is Bill Clinton a person who is now increasingly looking as if he's going to be implicated in the Epstein scandal, and the Daily Mail photographs which you were talking about, which, by the way, are undoubtedly real and authentic photographs. There's no question about that. So that puts him right in the middle of the Epstein affair. And of course, we've got this logbook of him, flying on the Lolita Express. And we have all the logs which show how often he did it. And of course, he's told things about that, which turns out to be completely untrue, that he was only there for a few times. But it turns out that he was on that flight many, many, many times.
D6.
Exactly. So, I mean, so Bill Clinton is, of course, heavily implicated in Epstein. But let's not forget, Monica Lewinsky. Not only did he have an affair with her, but he also committed perjury. He went to court and he lied about it. And so this is obviously the man who is the right person to talk about values and morality, because he is the person who understands them so well.
Yeah. And then he bombed Serbia. Yeah, and then he bombed Serbia for 72 days and nights to deflect from the whole Lewinsky affair. So
absolutely.
While we're on the subject of warmongers, they trotted out neocon warmongers. John Kerry, Colin Powell, of course. Colin Powell was one of the chief pushers of the Iraq WMD hoax. And John Kerry, well, I don't know what to say about John Kerry and what he did in Syria and God knows Ukraine and everywhere else. So what do you make of that?
Well, first of all, let's talk about Colin Powell. I mean, Colin Powell was, of course, the Secretary of State who came to the United Nations Security Council, delivered this ludicrous presentation about Iraq WMD. Colin Powell says, that he was misled by the intelligence agencies and it was all a huge mistake. That's very strange because, again, I have this in written proof. This is long, of course, before we set up the Duran, but I have it in writing that I actually watched that presentation, and I didn't just find it unconvincing, I found it completely ridiculous. In fact, and again, I have written proof of this, it persuaded me that there was no WMD in Iraq and that Colin Powell was talking absolute nonsense, because when you follow it through, it just didn't make any kind of sense. Now, you're telling me that Colin Powell didn't know that? That's what he's pretended ever since. But of course, that's also nonsense. So Colin Powell, a disastrous Secretary of State, deeply implicated in the worst foreign policy debacle the United States has experienced in the last couple of decades. He is clearly the right man to bring out to the Democratic National Committee. You're going to remind everybody again of his role in that debacle, of the fact that he served the Republican president, remember, who was involved in all of that. And you're going to do that alongside the wife of, John McCain, who was another Republican neocon, warmonger, supporting wars all over the place. Again, it doesn't seem to me to be a very wise and good idea. But again, it seems to me that the Democrats are living in their own fantasy world. So perhaps they see Colin Powell, not as I see Colin Powell, as a completely disastrous Secretary of State and a person who isn't, frankly, being straightforward or honest about his own role in the Iraq War, but they see him instead as somebody that they want to be associated with.
And Kerry? Any thoughts on Kerry?
Senator Kerry. I mean, of course, I forgot all about him. I mean, he was the person who was defeated by George Bush. I mean, he wasn't even able to win against George Bush. Aristocrat, enormously privileged family. Went to the same, college as he went to Yale College, where George Bush was. They were part of the same, college
fraternity.
Exactly.
That's the Skull and Bones thing.
The Skull and Bones thing and all that. But put all that aside, that's not Kerry's fault. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, again, an incredibly bad Secretary of State. The Secretary of State who's caught on microphone telling people from Syria that the United States is quietly happy that ISIS is spreading its tentacles in Syria because that will cause Bashar al-Assad to step down. So we were hoping that ISIS would do all that for him, but instead of that, we were thwarted in these great designs because Assad, instead of stepping down, called the Russians in. So this is all on tape. This is Kerry, the great master diplomat, the person who was completely outmaneuvered by Sergei Lavrov, Russia's Sergei Lavrov, in every diplomatic encounter he ever had with Lavrov, who was involved, as I said, with ISIS in this extraordinary, disastrous conversation, which was picked up on tape. And again, if you want to remind everybody of the complete foreign policy debacle of the Obama administration, of which Kerry was this luminous part, the war in Syria, the war in Libya, the foreign policy disasters on every front. Well, of course, you bring in Kerry, who was involved in so many of them. So again, it seems a bizarre choice.
And don't forget, Kerry was also involved in Ukraine because his stepson, Christopher Hines, was partners with Hunter Biden and Devin Archer. And they had this Seneca VC group that was working with Burisma. They had all kinds of investments in Burisma, including Hunter Biden being on the board. So, of course, Kerry is going to support Biden because their kids are in on the scam. They're in on the theft. They're in on the robbery in Ukraine, both of them together. It's a family business.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay. So one Secretary of State, former Obama Secretary of State, to another, they actually brought out Hillary Clinton. And all Hillary Clinton did was continue to whine about the 2016 results and how they were stolen by the Russians, and they were stolen by this, and they were stolen by that, and she should have been president. My God, you actually brought out Hillary Clinton. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, the Wicked Witch of the West is obviously the person you need to have to make the DNC, the convention, complete. I mean, given what a deeply unpopular person Hillary Clinton is, given the extent to which she completely messed up the 2016 election, which, I mean, most people accept, most people believe it was hers to win. I mean, you actually want to bring her back and lend credence, by the way, to all these rumors that still circulate, that she's the person who's ultimately going to be sitting in that Oval Office chair at some point through some mysterious process that nobody can quite explain to me. But those rumors are widely believed, and they are certainly someone that you bring out, bring her into prominence. And of course, you have all these other things, Benghazi, all of that, that's all back there, the Clinton Foundation, the emails that disappeared, the server that disappeared. I mean, you want to, again, associate the Democratic Party with all of that. I mean, it was a disastrous idea. I mean, Hillary Clinton, Kerry, Bill Clinton, really, all of these awful people from the past. Who's the person from the future? Well, maybe you will tell me, Alex. Who the person
No, I think I've saved the three best for last.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, of course. We have to talk about Obama, and Obama gave a 20-minute speech. And what is Obama's big complaint with Trump? I'll sum it up: that Trump is trampling on the U.S. Constitution. Alexander.
Well, of course, of which Barack Obama was the stalwart defender. I mean, he was there presiding in the Oval Office, even as the FBI was running amok, forging documents in order to get illegal FISA warrants on the Trump campaign. Who was also, this is the great constitutional lawyer. Remember, he's the man who knows all about these things. As they were all plotting in the Oval Office to launch a fake investigations based on the 1799 Logan Act, which has never been implemented at any time or enforced at any time. He's the great constitutional lawyer. He knows all about these things. He's the man who, did all those things with, with Snowden and Assange and whatever, who pursue this extraordinary war on whistleblowers. So, he's the person you bring out. Of course, there are there are people you call whistleblowers. There's a man whose name we can't mention, whose revelations were supposed to lead to Donald Trump's impeachment. Of course, it didn't. But he is called a whistleblower, but he isn't one. Barack Obama fought against actual whistleblowers. He brought more cases against them than any other president, I believe, in U.S. history. So this is the man, the great constitutional lawyer, the stalwart defender of human rights and freedoms, who kept Guantanamo Bay open after he said that he would close it, who destroyed Libya, who destroyed Syria, who has done all these terrible things, and he is the person who's going to lecture us about the great danger of Donald Trump to the Constitution, when it was Barack Obama's own administration that were plotting to overturn the election in 2016, which resulted in Donald Trump being constitutionally and lawfully, democratically elected president of the United States.
Yeah. Funded ISIS. Created open market slave trades in Libya.
Yeah.
Destroyed Ukraine and funded neo-Nazis in Ukraine to destroy that country.
Absolutely. Wrecked U.S. relations with all sorts of countries.
With everybody. The first, I think it's safe to say that Obama was probably the first president that we've known in our generation that didn't oversee a smooth handover from one administration to the other.
No, I mean, he went
sabotaged it. Yeah.
He sabotaged it, and he tried to sabotage Donald Trump's administration. And by the way, when Donald Trump said that his campaign had been that he'd been placed under illegal surveillance during the election campaign, Barack Obama came out and said it wasn't true, and we now know that it was. Yeah. So Barack Obama was denying something done by his administration, which we now know was done by his administration.
All right. And the final two, Alexander. One is Harris's acceptance speech in front of this big Zoom wall of people clapping. It was just, this was like something out of a horror sci-fi film where she was giving this speech and then turned to the Zoom wall. And it was so bad because they didn't even have enough people clapping in the boxes that they were actually repeating people in the boxes. They were actually duplicating.
I know.
This looks like a dystopian nightmare. Yes. And then the icing on the cake was Biden accepting the announcement that Biden was going to be the nominee, and Biden Biden looked so utterly confused. I mean, he looked like, what am I doing here? His face is golden. It's golden. I'll put a link for that video, for that tweet with the video underneath. I mean, it was, his staff came up behind him and they had little balloons and little things popping up in the background. And Biden just looked like, where am I? What's going on?
Well,
So
exactly.
Alexander Harris and Biden to top it all off.
Well, maybe Biden thinks it's 1988 and that he's won the nomination then, and that he's going to be taking on Ronald Reagan, because that was, of course, when he was, I think I'm right in saying it was 1988 that he was actually first campaigned for the presidency. And by the way, we remember that incident well in Britain because he plagiarized a speech by Neil Kinnock, who was at that time the leader of the British Labour Party. So, I mean, it's, I think it was 1988, might have been a later one. But anyway, it was a long time ago. And I completely agree. Biden looked completely lost. And as for Kamala Harris, I mean, you know, again, you only have to see her and listen to her to see why she's not the right person to choose. She's losing the Democrats' votes. And we've had opinion poll data now, and it shows that she's actually losing votes. And we saw why. I mean, it was an awful performance, as you said. It was you know what the French call grand guignol. It was horrible. It was just out of an awful horror film, and it looked like, you know, one of these sort of strange American films that you see, you know, The Matrix, whatever. I mean, this sort of effects. It had that sort of weird quality. Well, of course, they are very close to Hollywood in the Democratic Party, so maybe they're getting ideas from the sort of the sort of special effects and viewing image people who make these kind of films. But it was a very strange thing to actually have there. But I think, you know, coming back to what Kamala Harris actually had to say, the really striking thing about it was nothing very much, actually, a complete lack of ideas. And that, by the way, sums up the entire Democratic convention, as far as I'm concerned.
No policy.
I mean, no policies. No policy. None at all. Orange man bad, full stop. That's it. Yeah. that's the whole thing. I mean, you know, they all say these awful things about Donald Trump, but an actual program, something that the American people can take away with and think about and say to themselves, well, you know, maybe I agree with this or maybe I disagree with this. Well, there was none of that there, and certainly it wasn't from Biden. Well, as I said, perhaps we shouldn't expect it from Biden, but it wasn't from Kamala Harris either. I mean, it was an awful presentation of a completely empty speech.
Yeah, and they trotted out one unpopular, criminal, corrupt warmonger after another, one after another after another, and the whole thing, every speech was pure projection.
Yes,
pure projection.
Absolutely. Totally, absolutely. I mean, to an extraordinary and extreme degree, to the point where one wonders about, frankly, the health of these people, because it seems to me that when cognitive dissonance is so extreme, you do wonder about how well these people are in themselves, actually, because, as you correctly say, each one of them was chosen to embody the very thing that they are not. I mean, you know, Obama defends the Constitution when he subverts it. Bill Clinton, you know, morality and values. Well, we know all about Bill Clinton and values and morality. I mean, we have Hillary Clinton with her long whine. I mean, it was very weird. You know, Sally Yates, the weaponizing of the Justice Department, after all we've been hearing about, you know, the last year and a half about, you know, what was going on in the Justice Department. I mean, it was so bizarre, so strange. And of course, you know, the larger audience, the wider American people are going to watch all of this, will be watching. Well, maybe they won't be watching it because I gather the viewing figures are abysmal, but they'll know about this and they can work it out. I mean, they are able to see through all of this. Of that I have no doubt at all.
A complete disaster. A complete disaster.
Shambles.
Yeah.
an absolute shambles.